The prairie stretched out in every direction, golden and endless beneath the midday sun. Heat shimmered above the grass, and the only sound was the distant call of a hawk circling high overhead. Along a dusty trail, a lone figure stumbled, her boots dragging, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Blood stained the left side of her shirt, just below the ribs, dark and spreading with every step. Each movement sent a fresh wave of pain through her body, and every step seemed to cost her more than the last. She was young, no more than 20, with a face that might have been beautiful if not for the pain etched deep into every line. Her name was June Price, and she'd been running for hours, maybe days, from men who wanted her dead. She didn't know if they were still behind her, but she knew she couldn't go much farther. Ahead, a small ranch house stood against the horizon, its whitewashed boards gleaming in the sunlight. A windmill creaked nearby, and a few cattle grazed lazily in the pasture. June's vision blurred, but she forced herself forward, drawn by the promise of shelter, or maybe just the hope that someone would find her before the buzzards did. She reached the porch, collapsed against the door, and managed a single, desperate knock before her legs gave out beneath her. Inside, the rancher heard the thud and the weak call for help. His name was Wade Mercer, a man built like the land itself, broad, weathered, and silent. He'd lived alone since his wife died, years ago, and had grown used to the company of his own thoughts and the lowing of cattle. But he knew trouble when it came knocking, and he didn't hesitate. He grabbed his rifle, opened the door, and found June crumpled on the boards, blood pooling beneath her, her hand pressed tight to her left side. Wade dragged the young woman inside, laying her on the kitchen table. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust motes in the air as he worked quickly, tearing away the blood-soaked shirt to reveal a deep, ragged gash just below her ribs on the left. The wound was ugly, the flesh torn and angry, and every shallow breath she took made fresh blood well up. Wade cleaned the wound with whiskey, the sharp scent filling the room, and stitched the torn flesh with hands that shook only a little. June drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes mumbling, sometimes crying out. Wade ignored the words, focusing on the work, the way he always did when the world threatened to come apart. When the bleeding finally slowed, Wade wrapped June in a blanket and sat beside her, waiting. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, and the cattle lowed in the distance. June woke with a gasp, eyes wild, and tried to sit up. Wade pressed her back down, gentle but firm. "Easy, miss. You're safe here. For now." June stared at him, confusion and fear warring in her gaze. "They're coming," she whispered. "They'll kill me. You too, if you help." Wade shrugged, as if the threat meant nothing. "Let 'em come. I've seen worse." June's breath hitched. She looked away, tears tracking through the grime on her cheeks. "I can't hold it in anymore," she said, voice breaking. "Just make it quick, please." Wade frowned, not understanding. "What are you talking about?" June squeezed her eyes shut, fists clenched in the blanket. "I did something bad. I thought I could live with it, but I can't. I can't run anymore. If you're gonna turn me in, or do what they want, just make it quick." Wade studied her, the way a man studies a wounded animal, weighing mercy against necessity. He saw the fear, the shame, the desperate hope for an end. But he also saw something else, a flicker of innocence, a girl lost in a world that had no use for softness. "Tell me what happened," Wade said, his voice low and steady. June hesitated, then the words spilled out in a rush. "It was an accident, I swear. The banker's son, he was drunk, waving his gun around. I tried to take it from him, and it went off. He died. His father. He sent men after me, said I murdered him. I ran, but they kept coming. I can't run anymore." Wade listened, silent as stone. When June finished, the rancher stood, poured 2 cups of coffee, and set one in front of her. "You're not dead yet," he said, "and you're not alone. Not today." Outside, the sun blazed on, but inside the little house, A fragile peace settled. For the first time in days, June let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found a place to rest. June slept for hours, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion and pain. Wade kept busy, moving quietly around the house, checking on her every so often. He boiled water, cleaned his tools, and kept a watchful eye on the horizon through the kitchen window. The sun climbed higher, baking the prairie in relentless heat, and the wind carried the distant sound of hooves, sometimes real, sometimes just his imagination. When June finally stirred, the light had shifted, slanting through the window and painting golden stripes across the floor. She blinked, disoriented, then winced as she tried to sit up. Wade was there in an instant, steadying her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Take it slow," he said. "You lost a lot of blood." June nodded, her lips dry and cracked. Wade poured her a cup of water and helped her drink. She sipped gratefully, her eyes never leaving his face, as if searching for any sign of judgment or anger. But Wade's expression was calm, unreadable, the way the land looked before a storm. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Wade nodded, settling into the chair beside her. "You're safe here. For now." June looked down at her bandaged side, then out the window, where the prairie rolled away in waves of gold and green. "They'll come for me," she said quietly. "The banker's men. They won't stop." Wade's jaw tightened. "Let them try. I've got enough iron and grit to hold them off." June managed a weak smile, but her eyes were haunted. "You don't know them. They're not like other men. They don't care who gets hurt." Wade shrugged, his gaze steady. "I've seen men like that before. They bleed the same as anyone." The day passed slowly. June drifted in and out of sleep, sometimes waking with a start, her hand flying to her side. Wade kept the house quiet, moving with the careful patience of a man who'd spent years alone. He made a simple stew, coaxed June to eat a few spoonfuls, and told her stories about the land, about the time a tornado had torn through and left nothing but splinters, about the wild horses that sometimes came down from the hills at dusk. As the afternoon wore on, June found herself relaxing, the tension in her shoulders easing just a little. She watched Wade move around the kitchen, his every action deliberate and calm. She realized she hadn't felt this safe in a long time, but the peace was fragile. Late in the day, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Wade spotted a dust cloud on the far edge of the prairie. He watched it for a long moment, his heart sinking as he saw 3 riders break away from the haze, heading straight for the ranch. He moved quickly, checking his rifle, making sure June's revolver was loaded and within reach. He closed the shutters, bolted the doors, and helped June to her feet. "They're here," he said quietly. June's face went pale, but she nodded, her jaw set. "I won't let them take me alive." Wade looked at her, saw the fear and the fire in her eyes. "You won't have to. Stay low. If anything happens, you run out the back and keep running. Don't look back." June gripped his hand, her fingers cold and trembling. "Thank you, Wade, for everything." He squeezed her hand, then moved to the front door, rifle in hand. The riders were close now, their faces hard and mean, guns slung low on their hips. The leader, a thick-set man with a scar across his cheek, called out as they reined in their horses. "We're looking for a girl. Hurt, running from the law. You seen anyone?" Wade stepped onto the porch, rifle resting in the crook of his arm. "Ain't seen anyone but cattle and crows," he replied, his voice calm and steady. The man's eyes narrowed. "Mind if we take a look around?" Wade shook his head. "I mind plenty. This is my land. You got no business here." A tense silence hung in the air. The men exchanged glances, hands drifting toward their guns. Wade didn't flinch. He met the leader's gaze, unblinking. Finally, the man spat in the dirt. "We'll be back," he said, turning on his heel. The riders mounted up and disappeared into the falling light. Wade waited until the sound of hooves faded before he let out a breath. He went back inside, knelt by June's side, and gently squeezed her hand. June's hand trembled in Wade's, but her eyes were clear. The threat was real now, not just a shadow in her mind. She listened to the hoofbeats fade, her heart pounding in her chest, and for a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Wade helped her back to the cot, propping her up with pillows. "They'll be back, and next time they won't ask," he said quietly. "We need to be ready." June nodded, her jaw set. "I won't run again. I'm tired of running." Wade gave a small, approving nod. He moved through the house, checking every window and door, making sure the rifle and revolver were within reach. He set out extra shells on the table, then sat beside June as the last light of day faded from the sky. They waited in silence, the tension thick as the dusk deepened into night. June's wound ached, but she forced herself to stay alert, her hand never far from the revolver. Wade sat by the window, watching the yard, his silhouette steady and unyielding. Hours passed. The moon rose, silvering the prairie, and the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. June dozed fitfully, waking at every creak and groan of the old house. Wade never moved, his eyes fixed on the darkness outside. Just before dawn, the sound they'd been waiting for came, a distant rumble of hooves, growing louder, closer. Wade stood, motioned for June to stay low, and moved to the door. He could see the riders now, 4 of them this time, fanning out as they approached the house. The leader dismounted, gun drawn, and called out, "We know she's in there, Mercer. Hand her over, and we'll let you be." Wade stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, his voice cold and steady. "You want her. You'll have to come through me." The men spread out, guns at the ready. June, watching from the shadows inside, felt her fear twist into something sharper. Anger, maybe, or just the will to survive. She gripped the revolver, her breath coming slow and steady. The first shot cracked the morning stillness, splintering the porch rail. Wade fired back, dropping one of the men where he stood. The others scattered, firing wildly. June crawled to the window, took aim, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, and another rider tumbled from his horse. The fight was fierce and fast. Wade moved with the calm precision of a man who'd seen too much violence to be rattled by it now. He fired, reloaded, fired again, each shot deliberate. June, her side burning, managed to keep her aim steady, her mind focused on survival. When the smoke cleared, 2 men lay dead in the yard, another wounded and crawling away. The leader, bleeding from a graze to his arm, dropped his gun and raised his hands. Wade kept his rifle trained on the man. "You ride back to town," he said, voice like gravel. "Tell the banker his son's death was an accident. Tell him June Price is under my protection. If he sends anyone else, they won't be coming back." "Thank you for watching." The man nodded, fear plain in his eyes. He scrambled onto his horse and rode off, leaving the bodies of his men behind. Wade lowered his rifle, breathing hard. June slumped against the wall, the revolver slipping from her fingers. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Wade crossed the room, knelt beside her, and gently checked her bandage. "You're all right," he said softly. "It's over." June let out a shaky breath, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I thought I was done for. I thought I'd never see another sunrise." Wade smiled, a rare warmth in his eyes. "You're tougher than you think." They buried the dead at the edge of the property, marking the graves with simple stones. Wade sent word to the sheriff, telling the truth of what happened. The lawman, a fair man who'd known Wade for years, came out to the ranch, listened to June's story, and nodded. "I'll see that the banker hears the truth," he said. "You're safe now, Miss Price. You've got a good man watching over you." Days passed, and the prairie slowly returned to its quiet rhythm. June's wound healed, the color returning to her cheeks. She helped Wade with the chores, her laughter, soft and uncertain at first, growing stronger with each passing day. The nightmares faded, replaced by dreams of open skies and a life she'd thought lost forever. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the world in gold, June sat on the porch beside Wade, watching the cattle graze. She reached for his hand, her grip strong and sure. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady, "for believing me, for standing by me when no one else would." Wade squeezed her hand, his eyes gentle. "You saved yourself, June. I just gave you a place to do it." They sat in silence, the kind that only comes after surviving something together. The prairie stretched out before them, endless and full of promise. June knew the past would always be a part of her, but it no longer defined her. She was free, and for the first time in a long while, she let herself believe in tomorrow. And as the stars blinked to life above the quiet land, June leaned her head on Wade's shoulder, content in the knowledge that whatever came next, she would face it with hope, and with someone who had shown her that even in the harshest places, kindness could still take root and grow.